Okay, so I think we can start, even though a lot of people are still coming in. So welcome to this presentation. I'm pretty surprised we have a lot of people knowing that the sun outside is beautiful. But I think you came to the right place. So today we're going to talk about startups and what we do at Ministry of Programming. In particular, how to turn your idea into a live product. So first of all, I would like to ask a question. How many of you have ideas for products for startups? Okay, cool. So I think it's going to be useful. So you can, as we go through the slides, you can start thinking about your own idea and how you would use these elements and principles from lean startup methodologies to turn your idea into a live product. So first of all, I like always to open every presentation with this slide because sometimes you ask, who is this guy? So we come from Ministry of Programming. It's a Bosnian company in Sarajevo. Basically from inception in 2015 to today, we are just building startups. So we are deliberately choosing not to work on corporate software. So we work only on startups, and over the years, we built around 30 startups. Now we have a team of 60 people, and we failed a lot. So we also learned a lot. And our biggest success was a recent IPO with a company that we built with a group of founders in Germany. We IPO'd in the German stock exchange after 3 years of building the product. And now the market cap, the value of the company in the German markets is 210 million euros. So we basically started in Sarajevo with a small team of few people. Janan is here from the initial team. And over 3 years, we built a company valued 200 million. Here is my colleague, Adi. Adi is a product manager in the company, and he is also one of these freaks that tries to apply lean startup in our company as best as possible. So the goal of this presentation is to understand the critical elements and principles of lean startup, even though in this presentation we're not going to talk only about the classical lean startup stuff like MVPs, but also more. So this is a combination of different things, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So first, what's the definition of a startup? A startup is a money-burning machine with low chances of success. So you better give the money to your girlfriend instead. No, this is not the real definition, but the real definition of a startup, which is actually useful, is from Steve Blank, which I think is the startup god. And this guy has an amazing definition that says that a startup is a temporary organization used to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So this sounds a bit strange because, why do I need to search? How do you mean search? Right? Because I know my startup is going to succeed. Every one of you has an idea, so why do I need to search? I just need to execute. I need to have a very clear plan. I need to employ 10 developers, develop my idea, and become a billionaire. So why do I need to search? So what do I need to search? So, Webvan is a very good story. They also had a $1 billion idea. It was basically an online grocery store in the US, founded in 1996. And they were the typical startup. This is kind of the typical startup story. 99.9% of startups do it this way, even today. So they were founded in 1996. They were pretty sure of success. They were bullish. They thought, we're going to get big fast. We're going to succeed. That was the mantra at that time. They thought we're going to use the first mover advantage, move into the markets very quickly. We're going to kind of conquer the markets with aggressive marketing sales. They hired a very seasoned team, a very experienced team of CEOs, VPs from big corporations. So it seemed that everything was really, really good and that they did everything right. They also raised in total $800 million of venture capital and invested in complex infrastructure for delivery of these food items from these shopping carts to end users. But even if they IPO'd, so they went out into the public markets, they had some initial traction, they still failed. And they went bankrupt in 2001. And this is really a cautionary tale, because then you ask yourself, what happened? So this is kind of probably what happened. What happened was the retention death pyramid, which is something that obviously they were not aware of, but you know, they kind of started growing, but after some time they depleted their user base. The user left the platform. They didn't want to use anymore the product, and at some point they just died because they didn't have any more users, they didn't have any more money, they didn't generate profits and revenues as they expected. So in the end, they basically died. Even though the idea was really good, something wrong happened. So the question is, why it failed? Because they had money, they had a seasoned management team that worked at corporations. They focused on execution. You know, you're gonna hear always execution is the key to startups, but it's not true actually. Like, execution is important, but it's kind of like an umbrella term. I mean, what it means execution. In the beginning of a startup, you need to search, you need to discover and learn about your business model. So you need to assess the market and product risk, which basically means that you need to have a business hypothesis. Your strategy is not fixed in stone. So this is very unusual, because when we talk about agile, we talk about product development, about development processes, but there is agility also in strategy. So there is agility in strategy. So don't become a victim of strategy waterfall, because you have waterfall also in strategic management. You know, your strategy can change over time and should iterate. So I think that is the biggest problem why they failed. So what's the solution? What is a better approach that we can use to prevent the premature death that Webvan had? One possible solution, and this is not the only one because there are so many methods to build products efficiently, is to use the lean startup methodology, which has these three elements: build, measure, learn. And through our presentation, we're going to go deeper into these elements, but also talk about some additional things, additional methods you can use in development of your idea and your concept to develop efficiently.
Okay, so thank you, Faris, for introduction. Basically, now we are going to go a little bit deeper, and we are going to define the steps of lean startup. As I noticed, a lot of you raised your hands when you said that you have an idea for a startup. For the rest of you that didn't raise a hand, please, for the flow of this presentation, think about your startup and think about the idea and think about all of these steps that we are going to speak about, and try to apply them in your head for the sake of the presentation, and think about direction that you are going to go. So basically, first of all, you have an idea and you are on the start of your startup. What do you do? The main idea that you have regarding your business, your software, your product is your hypothesis. It is considered as main hypothesis and is the hypothesis that you want to test first. How you do that? There are a number of ways how you test your hypothesis, but most efficient way is through data. Basically, your main hypothesis is concerned regarding your product, what are you building, and who your customers are. But if you think deeply regarding your idea, think deeply regarding your startup, you're going to define much more hypotheses, many more hypotheses concerning your market, concerning your competitors, concerning the customer segments, so concerning some other potential influencers for your customers, etc. So that first step is basically listing all your hypotheses on one place. This place can be an ordered list, can be some bullet list, can be some numbered list, but the most structured way of formulating your hypothesis is business model canvas. Basically, it looks like this. So it is really important, and this is the step that most of startuppers fail, is when they formulate hypotheses. They don't write them down. They think, okay, I have all of my hypotheses in my head, and I'm ready to execute them. But that's not the case, because there are many more hypotheses that you are going to find out when you look at the business model canvas and just try to think about different segments of business model canvas. So basically, you are now at the step that you written down all of your hypotheses on one place. The next step is to validate them, meaning this is, at this stage, only hypothesis. You think that you know what your product is. You think that you know who your customers are. You think that you know who your partners are, but that is just a hypothesis at this stage, and it needs to be validated. You are going to validate it, as I stated, through data. Now, collecting data is another topic that can be done through numerous of ways. Best way to validate your hypothesis is through analytics metrics. But at this stage, this is still unfamiliar and unknown area. So basically, what is relied is you have to rely on your potential customers. You have to reach out to your customers. Basically, you have to get out of the building, as Steve Blank says, whether it will be physically getting out of the building and drinking coffee with your customers, having user interviews, or inviting them through Skype or through Slack. It doesn't really matter as much as you reach out to them and get their opinions regarding all of your hypotheses. So basically, this business model canvas is going to consist of all of your different assumptions. So after you complete this element, you're ready to go and to create some MVP or minimum viable product. However, let's just get back to the web one, since they were sure of success. Basically, they thought that they have a business model. They didn't have business model canvas. They had business plan. And what is the difference between business model canvas and business plan? It is that business plan strictly says, okay, in 3 months, we are going to be at this point. We are going to have this much money. We are going to have this much customers. In 2 years, we are going to have 100 employees. We are going to have good strategy, marketing strategy, good sales strategy. However, all of this can fall in the water once you go live, live with your product. So basically, you cannot have, especially in startups, you cannot know what will happen in next month, not in the next 2 or 3 years. So basically, this is their first fail, that they strictly wrote and strictly says where they are going to be in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, etc. And when they didn't meet their objectives, they simply called that as a failure and didn't want to go on. So basically, business model canvas is much better as it is structured through hypothesis, through your initial hypothesis that you know what your customers are and you know what your market segments is going to be. Now, you are in the phase that maybe when you start building MVP, maybe you have already created or validated some of your ideas, some of your hypotheses. Now it is the step to create your MVP, or how colleagues said, Peter, in the morning lecture, MVE, or minimum viable experiment. Basically, this is the better term for this first MVP that you're going to build. Your goal with first MVP is to test your problem rather than your solution. So basically, you are reaching out to your customers and testing that your customers really have the problem. And after you validate that they have a problem, you are going to work on creating the solution for that problem that you identified your customers have. How could you structure MVP? You have to structure it, best ideal scenario is using continuous delivery, where you already, at all times, you have code that is deployable, that can be pushed to production, and you are basically incrementing each day and creating the product that your customers want. So basically, from the day one, you want to create something that customers can use when you start developing, of course. That first minimum viable experiment can be of different types. Basically, you want to test your problem, and when you test your problem, you can write paper design prototype. So basically, drawing on the paper some sort of your solution for the problem. You can create a clickable prototype in InVision or in other design software. It really doesn't matter as long as you succeed in validating the problem and validating potential solution that you are going to create. To better understand minimum viable product, this is the example of Dropbox. Basically, what they did, they had the hypothesis that they have a market and they have place on market and they have customers for the market that are going to use website to share files. So to upload files and share the links with friends, with people that they want to send some files, some videos, etc. But they didn't want to invest too much money or too much effort at start in developing such system. What they did, they created a video that explains the process of Dropbox, their intention to create, their idea, and they uploaded that to Dropbox.com. Basically, they received the feedback from their customers that were really satisfied with the video. And in fact, the customers validated the idea and stated that they like the idea and they would like to see Dropbox, to use Dropbox in the future. Basically, this means that they validated this first idea and they could go to the next step or start developing their real product. So basically, this is a great example of MVP. Another great story for MVP is Zappos. Nick Swinburne, he is the founder of Zappos network. He had a hypothesis that people are going to order shoes online. Of course, it was a hypothesis, and he didn't want to invest a lot of money in building something that people won't use. What he did, he wanted to test hypothesis. He went in his neighborhood and went to local shoe stores and asked shoe store owners to take a picture of shoes. He justified that if some shoes are bought through his website, that he is going to come and pay full amount of money and send those shoes to a person who ordered it through his network. He took maybe a dozen of pictures of shoes and uploaded them to his website. The feedback was remarkable. In a couple of weeks, he had so many orders that he couldn't keep up with buying physically shoes from the store and then shipping them to the customers. Basically, he validated his idea with minimum resources. He invested only in shipping expenses by sending the item to his customers. He validated the idea, and today Zappos is worth over $1.2 billion and is part of Amazon. So basically, this is one of the two great examples how should you invest in your MVP. And when we go back, Web1 had 800 million of investment, but they failed at validating their hypothesis at start because they invested $800 million in something that they didn't validate that it is going to succeed or that customers are going really to use his product. This is one of the reasons why they failed. They invested so much money in actual development, in actual production, rather than discovering their customers, discovering market, and whether the market was ready for such new product. Now we are going to initial customer validation.
Thank you. So yeah, so now we have a written hypothesis through a business model canvas. We have means to test it through an MVP. And yeah, so now what's the next step in this process? So we should think about initial customer validation. So what this means is that you are looking for very specific signals when you are testing your MVP. And this is something that many founders get wrong because we are in this business where we are awesome entrepreneurs, and when I talk about my product, I'm so excited. I'm building this social network for cats. It's fucking amazing. So, and then what happens is that people usually are not gonna, since you are so excited and you're talking about your product, they're gonna tell you, it's amazing, send me a link when it's live. But, that's not a validation because, people are gonna tap you on your shoulder. Very few people in your life are gonna tell you the truth. And the problem is that there is a very specific methodology how to validate MVPs, and this is one of the hardest things in startups. So what are you looking for? So basically, when you want to validate your idea, you're looking for very, very strong commitments. So what commitments are those? You're looking for money commitment, reputation, and time or usage commitments. What it means? So literally, it means the following. So if I have a startup idea, when I pitch it to you, when I show the product, I'm literally going to ask you for money. I'm going to ask you, okay, if you want to use this, you can give me half money now, even before I build the full product. And if you don't want to do it, that might be a signal that it's not a good enough idea. Time usage is also a very good commitment. Like, for example, if I'm showing you a prototype of my product, I'm going to ask you, okay, so since you like this so much, why don't you come to our offices and work with us together to co-create the product? And why don't you invest 3 hours with our team to create this product next version? And that's also a commitment. So if people really like your idea, they're going to do that. And then reputation is a really cool commitment. So literally, I built a prototype. It's kind of like a shitty app, but it does solve your problem. And then I tell you, okay, since you are so excited about my product, why don't you share it to your Facebook friends? So this is reputation commitment. So think about this stuff when you're building your product. So don't get too flattered by and excited by compliments. That doesn't mean anything. And get out of the building and start getting real commitment from people. So Webvan, like many startups, got the wrong signals. So literally, they were probably congratulated. It's an amazing idea. You're going to sell food online. You're going to deliver the same day to customers. I want to use that. But when it actually came to usage, to actual usage, to active usage of the product, people were not online. They were not using the product. So real validations are much, much stronger than that. The next item that's very important in this process is speed. Because, okay, you are building this MVP, you know how to do it, you know how to validate the MVP, but you need to be much faster than you think. What we have seen in Ministry of Programming is that most founders think 3 months is a really fast development cycle. We also thought the same, but we were fools, because that's not fast enough. So you need to think in days and weeks, not months. And this is a very, very interesting advice, because you're going to talk with founders. They're going to tell you, we're going to launch in 3 months. That is a wrong approach. And the thing is that speed is a competitive advantage as well, because today in the market there are millions of apps. So whatever you are building, there are probably 3 different apps that are doing the same thing, just in a slightly different way. And speed of iteration is a really, really important thing. It's really important that you have this culture of continuous delivery, that you are building really fast, and that you are super agile. So why is speed important? Basically, it's important to learn as fast as possible, but also to fail as fast as possible, because you're going to run hundreds and thousands of experiments with different features, and you're going to go through this whole loop of testing every feature, every hypothesis you have. So your goal is to do it as fast as possible. So for example, if you have an idea about a feature that's going to allow people to send direct messages to each other, you don't want to build that in a month. You want to build something in 2 days, launch it, and test as soon as possible if it's going to work, through tracking customer behaviors, through talking to customers face-to-face, etc. So you're looking for strong analytical cues and strong signals that that feature is actually usable and valuable for your customers. And that's why it's super important to move as fast as possible. So when you think about MVPs, about startups, think in hours and days. That's my recommendation. What can you build in 1 hour? What can you build in 1 day, literally? And here we have a team that built an advertisement engine in 2 weeks and launched it, and they had a first customer. And this is remarkable. So Webvan has had a slow learning cycle. Literally, they spent 3 to 4 years building a product. They launched it out. They were sure of success. And then they discovered customers are not using it. So you need to strive to shorten the feedback loop, to try to build something as fast as possible, to get real data. Real data is in production. And when you understand your customers, then you're ready to scale. Okay?
Thank you. So now we move on to another key ingredient for lean startup. This is hypothesis-driven development. You already heard for hypothesis-driven development on previous lectures. But basically what is important, all of you have some user stories in your backlogs at work. And all of them, most of them state, I as a user want something like this. This is from the start fault, because you don't know that you as a user want something. You are only making hypotheses that you as a user want something. So basically all concept of writing stories in formulated way for startups is wrong from the beginning, because you're not sure that some of your users want something. in order to formulate this hypothesis, you should use this slide. We believe that something will result in, and we will know we have succeeded when there is some signal. Basically what this says that this shows which functionality we are going to build, but key question to ask yourself in this, formulating your user stories like this, is why are we building something? So basically, if you have some feature in your backlog that that you are going to develop, why are you building that feature at all? So asking yourself why, and creating success metrics that is going to measure success of the user story once it is live, once it is in production. So basically, what it means that we add another phase in your feature development. That is when it goes to production, basically a certain period has to pass, and then you are going to recheck whether your user story has really succeeded. For example, success criteria may be a 2% increase in registered users. So you wait 2 months or a couple of months in order to check whether that feature, that user story was success. If it was, then great, you are going to mark it as successful. So basically you have succeeded, your hypothesis was correct in the first place. But if it was fail, then you are going to refine it. It goes back to the backlog, and you either add some elements or you try to tweak it in order to satisfy the success criteria that you have defined on the start. So basically this is pretty advanced approach to development, and your client has to, of course, approve with this approach, and then you can really build things that matters, because at the end, when you're building your own startup, it's not just building features like Webun did. For example, Webun created a lot of out-of-my-ass features, meaning that founders said, okay, I need this, and they build it. No justification why we are building that in the first place. So basically, first answer the question why you are building something, and formulate success criteria that you have to meet in order to pronounce that user story as successful. So this is the key element and key theory behind hypothesis-driven development. At the end, when you look at your backlog, in 2-3 months, you want to have as much success items as possible. And basically, you're going to bump up your analytics, bump up your metrics. Even your way of thinking about features is going to change because you're going to think about building features that really satisfy your customers, because they will bring you in the end success, and you are going to measure it through success criteria. Of course, now when we talk about hypothesis-driven development, the best hypothesis-driven development is done in the conformity with a data-driven approach. So basically, you have to take a look at your analytics, at your metrics, and based on that and based on your communication with your customers, you are going to formulate the best possible hypothesis. So a mixture of hypothesis-driven development and this data-driven approach to forming hypothesis is a kind of way to go with a lean startup. This is another really important element of a lean startup. Pivot or persevere. This is the question that each founder will ask himself 1 million times. Basically, let's put it simple. If I am founder, I have a great idea, and I'm thinking this idea is in my head for 2 years, and I'm thinking of this new website that has, I don't know, red background, for example. And 2 years it is sitting in my head with the red background when I visualize it. However, I go on and I speak with my customers. I have a lot of interviews, and 80% of my customers state, okay, I see that website with blue background. Now, this is the place where the simplest pivot or persevere will happen. But I, as a founder, I, as a startup creator, need to lower my ego and go with the data, so go with the customers. Because in the end, I'm not creating the startup, the software, the product for myself, I'm creating for my customers. So basically, it's really important to lower your ego when you're making decisions, and make a decision that that your customers are going to have benefit from it, and not you. Because in the end, they are the ones who will use the product and software, not you. For example, I love Andrew Mason and his The Point case study. He created The Point to enable people to set collective goals. Basically, you could come to his website. This was his startup idea. You could come to his website and set some collective goal. And with the help of whole community of The Point, you are going to achieve that goal. This was his hypothesis, and this was his idea. He had 1 million of investment for that, and after some period, after talking with customers, after analyzing data, analyzing customer interactions, and analyzing numerous of surveys and metrics, he decided that people are not, that website is simply not growing. Basically, the community is not actively in the collective goals. So they are not actively formulating and setting up the collective goals. They are not using the website that as he wanted for them to use. So what he did, he analyzed the interviews and checked that really a lot of customers stated that they use the website for buying and selling. And a lot of customers were using coupons. In his normal speech with customer interviews, he concluded that they really enjoy scraping the coupons from newspapers and using them and buying things that are on sale. So what he did, he pivoted completely. So he abandoned completely his initial idea to create a pivot and created a WordPress site, WordPress look-like site called Groupon. He only concentrated on buying and selling coupons and abandoned all other customer segments. Why? Because data and customers told him to do that. And he created Groupon that was selling only the coupons from his website. First coupons that he said was that he sold from the website is from pizzeria in nearby. Basically, after the first coupon was sold, the customer number was so big that he needed to put the limit on number of coupons sold. So basically, he validated his idea at the first site. And today, Groupon is worth roughly $2.7 billion. So basically, I call him as master of pivot because he completely lowered his ego and completely abandoned his initial idea to create The Point and created Groupon because customers said that they would like that, and the data told him that that is the right thing to do. And he succeeded in pivoting, and of course today Groupon, we have e-coupon, we have City Deal. Groupon has a lot of subsidiaries and a lot of websites that are basically copying Groupon in the world. Now Faris is going to talk about analytics.
So this is my favorite part. So analytics and metrics. This is the foundation of building good products, and this is the part that people don't talk enough about, but actually this is the secret sauce. So if you want to build a successful startup, be ready to get really good at this stuff. So when I talk about analytics and metrics, I don't mean just numbers. I also mean qualitative data, but analytics is really important because actually, I believe that any process, and I'm really biased about this, I believe that any process in businesses, but also in personal life, anything that you want to optimize, you need to measure. Peter Drucker, a really smart guy, which is the inventor of modern management, and he has some amazing books that you can read, said that you cannot manage what you don't measure. And this is really true. And if you think about your health, if you don't measure your blood parameters, if you don't measure your blood pressure, if you don't measure your health state, you cannot manage it. It's the same with businesses, it's the same with startups. You need to have a lot of data, but you need to know exactly how to use this data. So this is a graph that I draw to kind of outline how I think about early stage startups. This is not applicable to everything, but I believe that many founders are doing this stuff wrong because they think as a corporation. So when they found a startup, they have this amazing idea, and they are 3 months in developing this idea, they are thinking like a corporation. Literally, they are starting to look at revenues, at CAC, how much money they are spending on marketing, and all of these things. But actually, that's really wrong, because a startup is not an enterprise. You don't know what's your customer. And you know, you cannot invest in marketing. Actually, I really like the quote, "Marketing is for losers." Because you know, for startups, what you really care about initially in early stage startups is empathy and stickiness, because you're actually looking into understanding your customer. You want to profile the psychology of your customers, the problem space. So in design thinking terms, you're actually researching the problem space. So you are kind of questioning your idea and your hypothesis about value, and you are trying to understand if other people have the same problem that you think they have. And how do you do that? Through qualitative metrics, through basically user interviews, face-to-face. And this is something that many founders skip. So they look right away, they set up right away Google Analytics, and that's it. And basically, you know, Google Analytics is nothing. It's like, it's literally, it's completely wrong to set up Google Analytics and that's your only analytical system, because it's not telling you almost anything. And then there are hundreds of graphs and dashboards that you don't understand. And instead, you should know what you want to measure, and that's actually first qualitative data. You should run customer interviews. You should assess the problem space, profile their needs, their behaviors. And then when people start using your product, you want to start tracking retention on your platform, which means active usage. Are people using my product every day, every week, every month? Are they performing the key actions in my product every day, every week, every month? And then you get some real gold that you can use for decision making. Because, you know, if I have 100,000 users on my platform, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe 1,000 of them are active daily, or maybe 90,000 of them are active daily. That's a huge difference. Like, for example, you know, Facebook, WeChat have hundreds of millions of daily active users. And that's the real metric that matters. Because you're actually looking for people to really be delighted by your product and to use it every day, every week, every month, and to come back, because every business and also startups are actually built on loyalty and on people coming back, purchasing more, purchasing more, purchasing more. So after you build your MVP and you understand your market, you understand your customers, then you can start thinking like a corporation. Then you are off the search phase, you are into the scaling phase, and you understand, okay, you know, I know who my customer is, I know what they want, what are their needs, their behaviors, their pain points, and then you start investing in marketing and sales. And then you start looking at typical marketing metrics like revenue, marketing spend, all of these things. You are trying to segment your customers, where are they coming from, what's my ROI on marketing channels, blah, blah, blah. That's really cool stuff, but that comes later. And this is pretty controversial, by the way. I mean, a lot of founders are going to tell you the opposite, but I think they are getting it wrong completely. So Webvan, as a really failed startup, they were tracking the wrong stuff. They were looking at vanity metrics, they were looking at revenue, they were looking like at, you know, volume of sales, how many orders we had last month. They had a target of, I think, 8,000 orders per month. That doesn't mean anything. Basically, they were looking at KPIs like they are a corporation. They were looking literally at numbers that a big corp would look at. So the key ingredient is looking at different metrics at different phases of your startup. And this also depends on your strategy, because, I mean, whatever I told you might be wrong in specific contexts. But the key is questioning, should we track revenue from day one? That's a really key question. Should we track marketing spend from day one? Should we even invest in marketing at all? Because maybe we want first to launch our product to 100 people that really love it, that use it every day, and then maybe invest in marketing. Because these are really good questions, and a lot of them are related to analytics. And as I said, you have two types of metrics. You have quantitative data and you have qualitative data. Qualitative data is really, really important. And this is something that many founders skip. So talk to your customers, get out of the building, talk with them face to face, bring them into your office, or even better, go to where they are. Whatever, go to a meetup, go to a conference, find your customers somewhere and talk to them. And then ask them the same questions in a very structured manner, and then get back to your team and share these this information, collect it in a central place, start getting insights from this information, start getting clues about what your customers want, what are their needs, their behaviors, their purchasing behaviors, how much are they ready to pay for your product, all of these things. And then you are sharing this with the whole team. And then this is also very important information to make decisions. So behavior analytics and insights trumps ideas and opinions any day. And this is really true because, you know, you have ideas, you have opinions, but as Adi said, you are not the user. The users are somewhere out there, outside of this building. And it's really important to ask them what they want, not ask yourself, which is really hard because we are all egocentric people. We think we have really good ideas, etc. But again, analytics and insights might prove us really, really wrong. And this is good because then you can pivot and you can succeed. This is an example of a really cool way. Like if you have a really advanced development process, you should have this anyway, regardless of being a startup or not. Imagine these numbers on the bottom are your release dates or weeks. Like imagine you have release dates, and then you are able to track behaviors of your customers from release to release. So just imagine you launch a new version of your product, and then you can track exactly the change that happened to user behavior in your product after that release. So this is the pinnacle, the zen of development. So this is something that everyone should strive to have. How many of you have something like this in your companies? This is completely unknown almost in companies, but this is just imagine having this kind of insights for any product you are developing. You launch a new version, you are looking at the cohort, the group of people that registered after that version, and you're tracking their behaviors to assess if your hypothesis about value of that feature actually stands. And 90% of the time you're going to discover it doesn't work. 90% of the features don't work at Microsoft, at Netflix, at many companies. They are failing all the time. But since we are not measuring this stuff, we don't know. But I'm telling you, we are failing much more than they are failing. So there's a really cool quote from Jim Barksdale that says, if we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. Because you know, if we don't have data, then usually the highest paid individual in the company is making all the decisions. And you know, the CEO probably, or some VP, or your CTO, or maybe your project manager. Maybe you are that guy. So maybe someone is making decisions, as we like to say, out of my ass decisions. So literally you are just deciding based on your own gut feeling. And even though I believe that gut feeling can work sometimes, especially for experienced individuals, I really like data more than gut feeling. So basically, when you have data, we have something to talk about as a team. And this also builds consensus because I don't want to be the guy that makes all the decisions. If we have data, we can kind of group around data. We can say, okay, you know, the data is showing this, and then nobody's going to get hurt feelings because Ferris is making all the decisions. No, I mean, we have this data, and then Adi thinks one thing, I think another, but the data shows something else. You know, we're going to use the data. So I think this is really cool. And with this, I would close this session. Thank you for listening. And do you have any questions?